Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is Ryan Sung. He was born and raised on Oahu, and he has always been a local boy at heart. Moving away in 2006 to attend community college in Orange County, eventually transferring to USC, he always knew he'd be back someday. After graduating, he worked in advertising with the eventual goal to pursue a media sales position until he was called by his parents to see if he was interested in learning the family business. This decision was not easy, knowing the pressure to prove his worth at a company that had grown quite a bit since he left home. But he knew this would be an opportunity worthwhile should he be able to succeed. Like many sons or daughters in his shoes, entering a family business started by his parents, there is little structure when it comes to training and plenty of constructive criticism. In addition to the pressures of proving, there are the complicated aspects of family dynamics and that come into play, sometimes resulting in an absence of professionalism. All in all, he finds himself fortunate having the opportunity to carry on his family's legacy, contributing a fresh perspective while also honoring the vision his parents have in mind. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. So let's hop right in. What was it like growing up in your family business?
Yeah, sure. So just for some backstory, this family business was, my parents were always entrepreneurs, right? So they didn't always have a cookie company though. Before this, it was actually kind of souvenir type business. For anybody that went to Hawaii back in, like the 90s, it was, if you ever went to ABC store and saw shirts and clocks and coasters with the Hawaiian maps on it. And, they were kind of like wood frame clocks and whatnot. That was kind of the business earlier on. It evolved into kind of a food business where we started like making muffins and whatnot. Wow. And hard candies and cookies here and there. And then it eventually finally evolved into like the cookie business. And all those pivots over time were a function of kind of like what was going on with the economy, how the business was going, if it was continuing to grow. And so eventually we kind of settled on that cookie business. And so growing up, it was always very interesting having entrepreneurial parents because the businesses that weren't successful, I didn't personally feel it or recognize it as much, but we were moving a lot. We either had a nice house or we were living in my grandma's house. And so it changed over time. I was too young to, like I said, recognize what was going on, but looking back on it, I definitely saw where the sacrifices came and at which points in time that our life changed and the reason why it changed. And I understand it now. And so it's been exciting this whole time and never a dull day for sure.
I think it's good that you touched base on that too, because nowadays entrepreneurship is so, Hollywood and everything is so glamorous. It's like you work hard for 1 or 2 years and your whole life is glamorous. But here you are just telling the hustle story, literally, of your parents, and what it entails become that successful. I've seen it with my parents as well, like same similar story growing up. We'll be in a small house, we'll be in a big house, depending on how my dad's business does. So very similar background. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, we read a couple of articles on you. We know that, you were really into skateboarding and just like cutting cookie samples, helping out with your family business. When you were at that age, did you have any idea of like the magnitude that the company would get to at that scale? Or, were you just kind of helping out your family and going about it?
Yeah, in the early years, definitely not. It was cool having my parents have a cookie business. It was, it wasn't like an apparel brand or something like that where, it's like streetwear or something like along those lines. But it was definitely cool having the business and watching it grow slowly, cutting the cookies back in the day. And that story actually came from, and part of growing up in the family business was like me skating around the warehouse, setting up ramps with like, whatever spare wood was laying around and bricks that they had in the warehouse and creating random ramps and just trying to entertain myself because my parents were at the factory all the time. And, I was in this back room watching movies every now and then. And then kind of once the business started to, they needed help from us, we would help out where we can. I was, I can't remember. I was like in middle school I was in middle school around there. And so cutting samples, and that's kind of what people, I guess some of the stories where people understand our business, they remember a lot, and they recognize whenever they go to the store, they always remember going to the store and eating as many free samples as possible. So we've always had that aspect of our business. And so me cutting the samples, we don't have to cut the samples anymore, but that was like the very early days. And so I never thought the business would grow because we had such humble beginnings. And the more and more the business, I guess from the word of mouth marketing that happened, the more and more the business grew, the more opportunities we had from landlords calling us to enter their space. And I think, for my dad, at least, the days that he worked with the ABC stores in Waikiki, he understood that business model where, they have a store on every block. Mm-hmm. He was essentially trying to be like the ABC stores of the cookie companies, I guess. And, it worked out fairly well. Not so well during COVID time where we have a lot of leases, but during the time of expansion, it definitely was good for getting our brand out there, getting it recognized. And so when I came back to the business and started working for them, it's going to be 5 years next year. When I came back and moved back to Hawaii, they had like 21 locations at that point, and over 400 employees. So when I mentioned that it was scary going back to a business with, that has grown exponentially, that's the type of business I went back to initially, and getting to know the people that was worked there. The people don't even, they know me as the son or whatever, silver spoon kid. But that was a lot of the insecurities and fears that I had when moving back. And I never would have thought I would have grown that big, but it did. And, that's where I was a little bit worried.
Mm-hmm. I mean, your company is iconic. Every time we go to Hawaii, we see it everywhere. Before we go back to California, we always make sure to pick up a badge and give it to our friends and family. And that's amazing. We love that iconic feeling for your company. So out of curiosity too, like how did you help maintain the culture that your parents built onto the vision that you have right now?
Yeah, I think one thing that I made it a point to do, and, with the help of a lot of our senior management team and just the management team in general, was everybody had an idea of what the culture was, but it was never defined. Mm-hmm. And so I never went to school for business or anything like that. I don't have my MBA, but, I definitely like to try to improve myself as much as possible, research where I can, develop myself as a leader, and, take advice from as many people as possible. So what I've kind of got from all of that was, for our company, we always had this familial business culture, and we have always cared about our employees and the team. And we tried to do things as humanely as possible, legally, everything legally as well. And so that kind of culture rolled out into basically how everybody functioned in the business at that time. But like I said, it was never defined. So I made it a point to kind of work with all of the management team to really set kind of the vision, the value, the core values, write examples of what those core values and how we represent them with real life examples that we do every day, just so everybody could understand in some capacity that, we're living these vision and values every day, and we didn't have it written down before. And, some of it, and I was talking to my friend about this yesterday because, I'm just kind of helping him out with his business. And it sounds like corporate fluff somewhat if you aren't involved in the process. But once you understand that the vision and values are very important for setting kind of the boundaries of how your business should function, it's very easy to function within those boundaries afterwards. Yeah. And so that's what I wanted to do for the business, and as much as possible, push those values, not even push the values. I would say, make sure the values were exemplified in a natural way. And it wasn't like aspirational goals. It was existing values that we already had. Right. So I wasn't saying something that we weren't. It was just defining what we already were.
Yeah. I love it. And it's also like you have that basic, understanding, and, you understand it because it's your family business, right? And you already have that foundation laid out for you.
And you're so humble, dude. Like that's really awesome to hear. Like you're so willing to learn and grow.
Yeah.
We probably met a lot of people out there that don't really have that burning desire if it's kind of like inherited from their family, but you have like that hustle first generation mentality, which we love a lot. So appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I definitely don't have probably the same experiences that my parents had to go through. They, as immigrant parents, and I'm very blessed to have this life for sure. And they've always ingrained very similar values in me. So they'll shut me down at any time. Don't get me wrong. So I don't really step outside of my boundaries too much.
Speaking of which, what kind of values did your parents instill in you as you were growing up?
I think the humble part is the biggest one for me. They're always stressing to be humble. Don't get too big headed of yourself,
Do you guys have humble, like the wrappers on your cookies and everything? And the word,
what was that?
Do you guys have like the word humble on your wrappers and your cookies? I think I've seen it somewhere. I'm not too sure. I remember in residence the word humble a lot, if I remember correctly.
We don't personally. I'm not sure. But that's part of our values for sure. It's in there, and everybody at our business. And I think part of the Asian culture is humble and somewhat more reserved, I'd say. And so that's kind of, as much as possible, we want to be, we want to make sure we know where we came from and where our roots are, and never get big headed. Our business did well. And we're very fortunate to have had that happen, but there's times like this where it doesn't do so well. And so it's definitely a humbling experience once again, and showing what we have to do to make sure we continue. And I think and touching back on the values, I think a lot of the values that we've set and the team that we've built, without this whole team, we wouldn't have been able to get this far during COVID. And we've been able to kind of outlast, maybe other companies that haven't been able to make it there. But I think because we have a very strong backbone as a staff and team at Honolulu Cookie.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you regarding, Asian people being very humble. Like oftentimes big corporations that are owned or led or founded by Asian entrepreneurs, we often don't hear about it because, they often stay quiet about it. They don't want to talk about it or brag too much about it. But I love how you are, stepping out and talking about the family culture within, your business and showing the family side of that. And I think that's what makes customers fall in love with your story even more, because they tie in, their own experiences to your background and to your family story as well.
Yeah, more people need to hear your story, right?
Yeah. No. This is a great opportunity. So thank you guys for even letting me share this story. This is actually the first time I've ever done this.
Oh, wow.
So, that's amazing. This will be interesting to hear back for me.
So I'm very curious, you were at USC and you also worked in advertising for a little bit. Did you have like a point in time where you knew like, okay, this is the time that I want to go back home? Because it seemed like your family was very open to you, pursuing your passion, whatever it may be. If it wasn't the family business, then they were okay with that too. But for you to make that decision, like, hey, I'm going to go back home and help my family with this, what was that point in time like?
Yeah, so they had somebody managing the business. I think they were a little bit more removed at that time when they called me back. They're thinking about the succession part of it in some sense. Who's going to carry on the family business, their business that they grew over time. And so the person managing the business, he introduced some structure at our company, and he introduced kind of that professionalism that kind of took us to more, I think more corporate, but not so much corporate, just adding more corporate structure to a business that was growing, and that was necessary in order to make sure we could grow at the pace we were growing in a sustainable way. Mm-hmm. And so when they called me back, it was more so, hey, do you want to, have the chance, do you want to learn the business? We want to be able to, not really groom you, but show you the ins and outs of it, start to train. And, my parents specifically said that, start flying back, start to come to these financial meetings with us, see what the business is like from that sense. And, just get a baseline understanding. I was doing this all while working too. So I'd fly home on like the weekends every now and then, just to kind of attend like a meeting here or there for whatever quarterly meetings they had.
Yeah.
And so my mom mentioned to me specifically, she was like, if at the end of the day, if you don't like it, you don't have to do this. You don't have to take on this business from us. It's up to you. Whatever you want to do, it's fine. But I think this would be a good opportunity, and it resonated with me. And that was always such a mature thing, I guess, to say. And so it didn't put too much pressure on me. So it really was my decision at the end of the day after that, if I wanted to do it. And so, like I said, I was thinking about it. And if I could succeed, I knew there would be opportunities. I would talk to coworkers that had family businesses, like older coworkers back at my old job. And one of them mentioned that, he regrets he didn't do it at his family business. And, his business grew, and it was already too late for him to come back anyways. And so that kind of, during that time, I was asking for a lot of advice once again. And so that's kind of, it's helped me push me to getting to that point. But the first 2 years, man, that was crazy. I was not sure if I liked it or not. And it was more so just like constantly doubted, like imposter syndrome. Everybody has it, no matter what job you work. But there is a load of imposter syndrome I had working with a company that large. So it was pretty scary.
Yeah, that's crazy to hear, like all your experiences too. So when you finally took the reins in 2018 as general manager, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, so that call, I think I went back in 2016, right? So 2 years kind of trained, worked at the retail stores for a couple months. And so I rotated through every department as best as possible. Like I said, there was no formal training program. So some of the departments I worked in were, it wasn't probably a fully vetted training. And it was just kind of like, oh, what can we find for Ryan? Somewhat in that sense. I'd say working at the retail stores was I really, really value that experience, being able to work with the customers, having the exact same schedule as everybody else, just being a retail associate, doing everything they had to do, opening, closing the store, all that kind of stuff, and being customer facing and understanding what was going on at the retail level. And the retail stores are kind of our bread and butter of our business. And so once I got that experience under my belt, I'd say that was the most well-planned part of my training. And the rest is kind of like, oh, what can we do here and there? What would be good for Ryan to do now? And so it wasn't like the total priority, and there wasn't a ton of structure. And this is where it would be important for the next generation if whenever this business gets passed on to whoever else in my family or whoever it might be, to set some type of more structured program and some type of constitution, family business constitution, to kind of develop a more structured way to succeed businesses, to make sure that next generation has the most chance to be successful. Yeah. And so once I kind of got to general manager, that was more so a call where, okay, Ryan's going to have to figure out how to do this anyways. Yeah. And so there's no point in like putting him as like marketing director because he worked in advertising before and like see what he can do there. Albeit I had to like actually function as marketing director for like a very short period of time. But that was just because we were short staffed and I just kind of had to hop in, and that was fun. But there was just this underlying kind of feeling that, okay, from our management team, if Ryan is going to eventually succeed to be kind of a manager, you might as well just make a manager, see how it works, and then kind of like trial by fire, right? So just get thrown in, see what happens, and try to like work in my best ability to become general manager, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so that was that particular promotion, quote unquote, where, at this point in time, COVID has taught me truly what it meant to kind of help the business where we can. And during certain times, and like I said, I have a lot of support from our management team too, and they help mentor me as much as possible. And so during this COVID time, it's gave me the confidence to make decisions where I need to make it, and have an understanding of what the businesses look like in the prior 4 years I worked in it, and use those experiences to make my decisions in the future. And, there's nothing that could have prepared anybody for COVID. So a lot of us are just trying to make the best decision at any given time. And that's all we can do at the end of the day. And, if it's wrong or right, and, we just have to deal with the consequences. But as long as it fits within our values, once again, it is the best decision that we can make at any given time.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love how you always tie it back to your company values and family values.
Yeah, I think it's also crazy too that this is a common thing that we've been hearing a lot on our podcast too, is regardless of what type of experience you have in the past, by the time you step into a leadership position, you draw each of these experiences as a point of reference to make your decisions. And your point of view, it's like, you used to work in marketing now, it all plays back into how you make your decisions now. So you may, people out there listening right now, you may think that you work at a job that you're not going to get any value from it. You're always going to draw some sort of experience that you learn, good or bad, to make your decisions in the future.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, one thing I want to touch on that. So I actually didn't study business. Like I mentioned, I was a kinesiology major at USC.
Oh, wow.
I was a kinesiology major. I worked in advertising, and now I do operations management, marketing, branding, all that kind of stuff. So it's like,
wow.
I draw on the kinesiology part of my major with the more analytical background of that kind of major, where you have to digest data, study, do labs, and all that kind of stuff. So, the marketing advertising side was more like the salesmanship, being able to speak publicly and whatnot. And so it kind of evolved, and just like transferable skills over time have taken me here.
Right. Definitely.
Amazing. So since COVID has happened, how has that affected Honolulu Cookie Company, and what did you guys have to do in order to pivot during those times?
Yeah, since COVID, man, that was scary. It is scary actually still. So back in March, I think, I'm looking at a calendar right now, I think we shut down our stores March 18th. That was the call. The week prior to that, we were kind of knowing that other states in the mainland were starting to begin their rolling shutdowns. And so we saw it coming. We knew it was going to happen. We wanted to get ahead of it a little bit as much as possible. And because a lot of the customers that come to Hawaii are, tourists, we knew that people were potentially bringing in from the outside. So the 18th is when we made the call to shut everything down: retail stores, operations, the offices, everybody worked from home, scrambling as much as possible. The 23rd, the week, the Monday after that, the 18th was a Wednesday. The 23rd was when our governor basically shut down the state. And so we got ahead of it by 5 days. Those days in between were like, did we make the right decision? We're basically zeroed out on sales and all this stuff. But ultimately, it goes back to making sure our team and our staff was safe. And so we were able to do that. Everybody kind of like, we continued to pay them. We didn't know how long this was going to be. And I think everybody has a very similar story. They thought this was going to be like a couple of weeks and turned into 8 months now. And so we started to plan as much as possible, everyday planning. We had to implement COVID strategies. We had to implement what we're going to do with payroll, what we're going to do with staffing. What do we do with the employees now that they're just kind of sitting, waiting for direction? We should continue to pay them, make sure their medical expenses were covered. But we knew that if we continued to do that, it wouldn't bode well for our business. So we had long-term strategy sessions every day. We were just sitting together as a management team, trying to plan as much as possible for what we had to do to survive during all of this. We stayed shut down for, I think, pretty much a month and a half. And then we decided to open up our e-commerce business at least. Retail still stayed shut down. We knew without tourist retail, there would be no point to open it. All of our leases, they still required us to pay, all that kind of stuff. PPP came around, I think in April too, luckily. And so we got some PPP funds, but, at that point we were, downsizing staff. We had to, lay off, at the end of all of this, we laid off over 200 people. Wow. And so our business shrank dramatically. We've been down over 90% pretty much every month, over 95%, it's probably close to 100% in the beginning. We've been down every month since when we first shut down in March. So it's been extremely difficult. Luckily, we were a business that, we were healthy, but we always reinvested our profits back into our business. So it's not like we were sitting on a ton of cash or anything like that to continue our business. And so it was just a matter of time until we exhausted everything and make sure we tapped into other routes of financing and whatnot. But still a very, very long game ahead of us. And so the planning has given us the clarity to make sure we know how to spend what money we do have to take us the farthest possible. So our business can pretty much survive all of this. During all this time, once we got through all the COVID plans and all the protocols and set all that stuff up and changing, the changing regulations every week, it seemed like, waiting for tourism to open back up. During all of this, we've done so much since March as a team to implement what we needed to do. Pivoting was part of it. Making sure we put more focus on e-commerce, and then figuring out how to get our products outside of Hawaii was very important because people weren't coming into Hawaii anymore. And so that's kind of where that, Costco, that plan started probably in May, around there. Quickly pivoted to Costco Hawaii, and we had a local grocer, Foodland, help us out too. So some of the local businesses helped get some of our product offloaded, and then that kind of just snowballed into potentially and eventually Costco mainland helping us out too. It is taken with a grain of salt though, and Costco mainland has been such a great partner. Even the Costco Hawaii and Costco in general has been a great partner, and so they've been able to help us during this hard time where, luckily our brand, it's giving us some hope where our brand has some type of way to survive in our e-commerce business. People are, supporting us through that route. Yeah. But, with the amount of retail stores that we have, it's still extremely difficult to make sure we can cover those costs, continue to operate. And any retail stores that we have open, to be totally transparent, it's not covering their expenses. It's just kind of keeping them open at a very baseline and limited hours, and not all of them are open either. So it's, we're constantly thinking of ways to change to make sure we can kind of make it through all of this. And we have a long road ahead of us. 2021 is going to kind of be a very pivotal year for making sure all of our plans continue to go to how we strategize in the beginning of the year, and kind of we're making sure we keep a very close eye on what's going on.
Wow. I mean, listen to your story, very inspirational. What I can sense from this is like, you're very positive. You're always looking for solutions, even though things are not looking well, and I think that mindset makes one heck of a difference to deal with your challenges. So appreciate that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely 2021 is definitely going to be a pivotal year, but I'm glad that you guys are able to, see your, just plan ahead and really take those steps for the next year.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious too, Ryan, like, what is a day in your life like running this company? And out of curiosity too, like, how do you source your different ingredients for your product?
Yeah. You might have to ask that second question again later if I forget it, but
no
like day in the life for me is, a day in the life for everyone. I try as much as possible. And we all as a management team try to stress this, is everybody needs breaks for their mental health too. We were working at pretty feverishly, like unsustainable pace. And so taking a day off on Fridays here and there, taking 2 days off, Thursday, Friday, making a long weekend is very important. There's no travel involved. So that's kind of first and foremost, to make sure that people get to enjoy their weekends. We don't want anybody working on their weekends. Certain times, obviously, we're going to have to push a little more hours, but making sure that we find the balance eventually. And so the day in our life, and my life at least, is, on Mondays, we, always have a status meeting. I try not to have too many meetings, and it's a time suck. Everybody has a good understanding of what has to be done. So just kind of regrouping, following up on what happened last week and looking forward to what's going on this week, and just kind of setting the tone for the week. After that, everything, because, I basically manage the team, all the executive staff, everything essentially flows as much as possible. And this is the kind of structure we wanted to flow through me, so I can communicate to my parents afterwards. So we don't have to have a separate meeting with them either. And so on Tuesdays, that's when that happens. And so after that, those are pretty much the only 2 set meetings I have. Everything else is, meeting with landlords to discuss rent relief, meeting with Costco buyers to, coordinate whatever their purchases are, meeting with the team to develop products for what we're trying to do and part of our pivot strategy. making sure, we're making the right decisions for, whatever's going on for it. Right now. The fire drill is we're shorting products, and thank God we're luckily enough to have some type of volume for holidays, but it couldn't have been planned for because of COVID. So now we're just kind of scrambling to fulfill orders as quick as possible. And then typically after, the holiday season ends, it somewhat is a natural progression that it goes downwards again. Mm-hmm. And so just making sure as much as possible, for me at least, my job is creating as many opportunities, making it easy for people to work and function and keeping their sanity as best as possible. Yeah. And so I'm not trying to inundate them with random projects here and there. It's always making sure that it has the ultimate goal of, as much as possible for our business to, have some type of revenue generated, and there's some potential in the future when we foresee something that some type of partnership might end, or some products might rotate out of being merchandised at any given partner, having the next steps to what we're going to do at that given time. Mm-hmm. And so it's constantly just thinking along those lines, and, just checking in beyond those meetings, just checking in, just on one-on-one calls, just giving everybody rings each other up. I think we're pretty efficient now at using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and our phone text. And so we're a lot more accessible actually, and more efficient than meeting in person all the time and having unnecessary meetings. So kind of my day in the life, and dealing with fire drills here and there as best as I can. But like I said, with my team is amazing. And so they've been able to carry on what they need to do in their specific departments, and just kind of keep me in the loop, and, and therefore I keep my parents in the loop on what's going on. And for me, I just try to, as much as possible, create the opportunities, network as much as possible still during this time, to make sure that I can, find the right context at some point when I need to tap into my network, which is what happened during COVID. Actually, tapping into my network has been extremely important, and critical for our business too. Ingredients. I got that question now. So, ingredient sourcing. So Hawaii doesn't grow much of anything, right? We have pineapples and coffee. And so ingredient sourcing obviously comes from, whatever distributors have the flour, butter, eggs. And so they all get shipped in, but everything is made in Hawaii. And so what we need to do is just make sure that our distributors have quality ingredients and whatnot. And so we also have a partner in LA that actually helps us make some of our products. And so that's helped us during this Costco kind of transition. But during that whole time, making sure I work with that partner, it's same ingredients and all that kind of stuff. Quality is the same. So I had to fly back and forth up to LA during this time. Wow. When I wrote that Asian Hustle Network post, I was actually in California. And that was part of the making sure it rolled out at Costco correctly. And so, all of that labeling is on the packaging, so it's not like we're trying to deceive anybody that's like being made in Hawaii, but like, wait a minute. But I definitely want everybody to know that, for sure, I personally have been part of that kind of partnership, and making sure that every cookie that comes off of our partners' facilities are, being baked up to our standards and whatnot. And so same ingredients, same everything, same quality. And that's kind of first and foremost for us.
And when you guys were first starting out, was there like food scientists that you brought on board, or is it mostly like you guys taste testing?
It tastes good. That's good enough.
Yeah, the food scientists were probably us. Me, my sister, anybody that worked at the company had to keep on tasting cookies.
By the way.
Yeah, and so a lot of people want that job, I'm sure. But I still eat cookies all the time. Probably not as much anymore, just because I don't sit in the office. I did eat a lot of cookies when I was going back and forth to California to make sure everything tasted spot on. And so now we have, definitely structured quality and kind of R&D people in place to make sure that we can help develop. And we use outside consultants here and there to make sure that, for something that we're not able to do and create a flavor or something, that, we draw on the expertise of other people. And, we've had long-standing relationships over the past 22 years of being in business now, that we are able to kind of tap into different experts to help us develop anything that we might need. But it's always tweaked. We always get the final say. We always are tasting it, and we're like, hey, it needs a little more flavor. It needs not as sweet, or whatnot. It needs more mac nuts. So it's a constant kind of development in R&D. But I think we do flavors very well and kind of that Hawaiian inspired theme. And then on top of that, the seasonal flavors of like lemon, peppermint, pumpkin, ginger spice, all that kind of stuff. It turns out so well.
Well, if you need someone to eat your cookies for you to taste test, we volunteer as tribute.
I have a funny story. So Brian and I went to Hawaii. We were on Oahu, and we bought boxes and boxes of Honolulu cookies.
True story.
Obviously they're supposed to be for friends and family, right? I normally buy them for my family. We were on the airplane. Brian was like, let's just take some out of our backpack just to eat, So he took most of them out, and he finished it during the whole plane ride. I'm like, these are supposed to be for friends and family.
It's a long flight home.
So we ended up with like barely anything, but
there were no gifts left.
Exactly.
I am the gift now.
And so I'm very curious, what would be, in your opinion, what is the greatest thing about working so closely with your family?
I think for me, it's having this experience that, a lot of people don't get to work as closely with their family on a daily basis. A lot of people have jobs, they work for other people. And so, I know I'll look back on kind of these memories, later on in life when, at some point where I can kind of look back and, I've had all these experiences with my parents where I've been able to work alongside them and kind of help them through these times and whatnot. So I think I'm super fortunate in that way. And it didn't turn out to be a horror story, luckily, where I like hate my parents and like I can't work with them. I hear a lot of stories like that. And so I'm on the flip side. Obviously, it's difficult to work with my family at times, but cup half full. It's it's very meaningful, and the difficulties and intricacies that happen with working with a family business, it's worth it at the end of the day. And I think I'm very fortunate because my parents they're not so traditional, and like I think most Asian family businesses, if their dad started it, they're usually like a operator. They like to bake the cookies on the floor and stuff like that. My dad's like, he's an art major. He likes to like design the packaging, and like he doesn't like the operations, the management side of things. So it's like interesting because then I get to do that side of the business where, I think most family business operators are actually like baking the cookies day in, day out. They know how it's like, it should be, they know how the dough should feel and whatnot. And so like, it's, I'm just fortunate that in my family business, my parents give me somewhat a lot of freedom to make decisions on what I need to. I just got to loop them in. And, my dad is focused on what he likes to do, which, he's really good at. And my mom is like definitely has taken a step back where, she just wants to be in the loop, and she knows the value of me kind of being able to make decisions on my own as much as possible. So it's not so traditional where, they make the shots and I just have to listen. It's a very collaborative kind of effort between all of us.
It's amazing. Yeah. And so for your family business, what are your goals for the next 5 to 10 years?
5 to 10 years. I don't know. We had a 5 to 10 year plan originally, but now it's like, we got to survive 2021 is the plan. And then, I think though, but in all seriousness, I think our original 5 to 10 year plan was to build additional facility to make sure we can keep up with our production for our retail stores and whatever else business we wanted to grow a wholesale business such as Costco like this. This actually was part of our plan. It just had to be implemented and pushed up way in advance. We had a lot more capacity once COVID hit to try to do stuff like this. And so, I think my 5 to 10 year plan probably changed a little more where, we see the risks in having too many retail locations, or, we see the risk, maybe not too many retail locations. We see the risk in having too much eggs in one basket. So developing other parts of the business at the same time as developing retail and, wholesale and e-commerce and kind of stuff like that. So my 5 to 10 year plan, I'd say in 5 years, I hope we get to a more kind of even distribution of, revenue and whatnot. And then, my more short-term plan, I can't plan for 10 years, but my short-term plan is more so making sure our business recovers. We can get all of, the benefits that we've had to kind of remove from, our employee perspective back on board, bonuses, all that kind of stuff, where we become, profitable again, and we're able to function, and we're safeguarded from recessions like this and, black sheep events, where if we did have like this type of wholesale business in place that was, a major contributor, it would help us ride out the storm a little more rather than kind of scrambling to figure all this kind of stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the ideal business in moving forward is making sure we have more balance across all departments, and how they contribute to the overall business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I guess our final question is, what advice do you have for an aspiring entrepreneur just starting out right now?
I don't know. I'm not really an entrepreneur. That's the thing. I think I'm more so been fortunate to be placed in a business that already had structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I wish I had more of the entrepreneur experience. I'd say during COVID, maybe it's a little bit more like that, but we definitely still had a management team.
Yeah.
But I'd say, for me, I guess if I had to give some advice, I'm probably not qualified to do this, but if I had to give some advice, definitely just start and see where it goes, kind of thing. That seems to be pretty important. It's like you can have ideas for days, but if you don't actually, have an actionable plan to do it, then you're not going to learn anything at the end of the day. And so a lot of this kind of pivots that we've done is basically starting other businesses within our business itself. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I think starting a business, also setting the vision and values early on, is very important once again, and touching on that, just so you don't have to kind of make decisions that are outside of your comfort zone, and you could always refer back to them at some point. And that's what I was mentioning about with when I talked to my friend yesterday, that starting a kind of a business was, this is how we did it at Honolulu Cookie, and this is why it's important. And, this is what I recommend for everybody, honestly. If it takes a lot of time, but once it's kind of set, you don't have to think about it again. And it can kind of be tweaked in the future anyways. Mm-hmm. And so, those are the kind of the two big points, I think, for me. And I think just having, networking. Networking is probably the last one. Oh my God. Networking has helped us so much. Anytime I need a contact, because I spent a lot of time trying to network in the beginning, and joining organizations where I can, tapping into those organizations where people are willing to help each other. That's super important. Obviously, Asian Hustle Network is one of them, right? I'm in another organization called Young Presidents Organization, YPO. And it's just a group of basically business owners and / president level, CEO type level, basically positions in that in any given organization, and tapping into that network is always super helpful. And having like a small group of business professionals is kind of the benefit of that, to bounce ideas off of, to have like small group forums and have conversations. And so networking has been huge, I think, for us, for myself actually, and just developing my leadership personally, and then also just being able to reach out to them for advice and finding contacts on the fly. And so I think three things. Those are my three things.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. It has been so enlightening just listening to your story, and we can't wait to hear more about Honolulu Cookie Company through Asian Hustle Network. How can our listeners learn more about you online? And I have to ask this question: what is your favorite cookie?
What is my favorite cookie? I think seasonally, my favorite cookie is probably the dark chocolate peppermint cookie.
I love that too.
Yeah, I like Thin Mints. So I really think that tastes not similar to Thin Mints, more buttery for sure, but it reminds me of that. Outside of that, I'm more of a plain kind of cookie guy. So I like chocolate chip cookies in general, and the chocolate chip mini bites or the full-size chocolate chip cookie it just tastes really good to me. Everything else is also good, but those are my two favorites.
Awesome.
To answer your question, find out more about me.
Yep.
I don't know. There's all my Instagrams are private, my Facebook private. So how much more they can find out about me? I can post every. Yeah, I mean, for anybody there, I'm happy. I'm on Asian Hustle Network. They can reach out to me on that network. Shoot me a Facebook message. A lot of people have after I posted that post, and so I am going to post another post at some point in the near future, and that's for everything